Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name's Kaylee.
And my name is Desi.
Be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this topic, we always encourage those who have useful information to any unsolved case, please report it to your local police and sheriff department.
Bed and breakfasts were the earliest forms of hotels. The big benefit of them was a bed to stay in and free breakfast. In the 19th century, hotels in urban centers gained popularity, and a lot of them had pools. Hotel prices have risen, and in 2008, three roommates in San Francisco founded Airbnb. It was a way middle class earners could make extra income while also keeping prices competitive and often cheaper than hotels. Airbnb is booming, so this week we will be going over some really crazy fucking Airbnb Reddit stories that I'm sure a lot of people have experienced, besides these people.
Yeah, and if you have any crazy ass experience with Airbnb, I would love to know, so just post in the comments below.
I would also love to know that because I love seeing crazy stories
Yeah, me too.
about Airbnbs. It's kind of funny.
It is. So this first Reddit post is by Just Judifier. What are your Airbnb horror stories? And Silly Old Bears, they posted, arrived and entered the house by the way of the provided code for the electronic door lock. We had stopped to pick up groceries and some needed refrigeration, so we carried those in first, which is when I discovered the fridge was filled with food. Looked around and saw more food and personal items in the kitchen. Called out to see if I could get an answer. We walked around a bit. Imagine if you left your home for a day for work and a stranger walked in. This is exactly how it appeared. So we ran to the car afraid we were going to get the cops called on us and called the company who reassured us and told us that house owner said he was going to get things cleared up, which apparently hadn't happened. This seemed like the company should have checked, but they assured it was fine to just push things aside. Well, that's a red flag there. In the process of clearing things away into a large closet, we found half-used bottles of cancer medications and some paperwork which indicated the owner had been treated for stage 4 cancer. Between these and the other paperwork, we were fairly certain the owner died and his children had the body transported back to where his wife was buried in the northern state. We guess they arranged to rent the place without ever coming to clear his belongings.
Well, that's weird.
That is weird. Deleted. This one wins. Jesus, that's horrible.
Yeah. Um, this one by Maelstrom, which please no anal sex on the bed is the title of my worst Airbnb experience.
Oh boy.
There were these lovely notes from the host all around the property about their life struggles and how they didn't want us to have anal sex or period sex on the bed. Yeah, they probably put that there for a reason. They probably had those experiences before. The wall to the bedroom, booked as a private room, was paper thin and didn't go all the way up to the ceiling, and there were several bunk beds in the living room and another bedroom, and we all got to share one bathroom. The bedroom itself was a small space with two thin mattresses, smaller than normal single beds in size. The room was so small the door could only open when the mattresses were on top of each other. My partner at the time was unable to lie down fully stretched. The AC was so loud we had to choose between lack of sleep due to heat or due to noise. It was in DC a couple years ago. Since they had a rule of not leaving reviews, they managed to stay on Airbnb for half a year before they were removed.
It's another red flag.
They also included pictures.
Should we click on the picture?
Oh my god. It literally said
the note. They have a paper note.
If you have any complaints, please wait till the next day when we come to see what condition you yourself have left our room. That's fucking wild.
I would not have stayed there.
No, I would have left. Peace out, homie. Hell no. No, thank you. That's just insane.
The Boxman 154 was staying in a mini house in someone's backyard with my GF, so a guest house. Heard a helicopter a couple times fly overhead and just assumed a hospital was nearby. Was watching TV before bed and heard a loud knock at the door. It was a cop telling us there was a suicidal man running around the neighborhood with a gun that had already threatened multiple people and broken into a house. Thank God it was a cop and not the guy, as the door was stupidly left unlocked. The helicopter was a part of the search. Oh boy. That was scary.
What the hell part of town were y'all in? Because what? People, I swear to God.
Crazy people.
Oh, God. Too many pins, 6. The host was an avid flat earther who sat me down with his buddy to watch YouTube videos about it while he condescendingly explained to me that outer space wasn't real. Shower was so grimy and clogged it didn't drain, so even showering for only 2 minutes left me standing in a 3-inch puddle of water and bathroom scum. He told me I could store anything in his fridge if I wanted, so I put some leftovers in an opaque container in there. Another guest told me later that he complained to her that my leftovers had dairy in them. He was a fruitarian, which meant he actually opened and had gone through my leftovers. Wow. That's a little weird.
Yeah, that is.
Why would you go through somebody's leftovers? Why does it pertain to you if they're not yours?
Right.
Why do you care?
Peachykins. Guy left his handgun out. This is a country where it's almost impossible to get handguns. I packed my shit as soon as he stepped out of the apartment and called Airbnb. This was at like midnight. They were nice and put me in a fancy hotel for the duration of my stay. Well, that was good that they did that.
Deleted. I'm gonna try and share my Airbnb horror story using just 3 words. Bed bugs crawling everywhere. You're done. Burn the house. Burn the fucking house down because
burn the house.
You're cooked. You might as well just say goodbye to that house. You're fucked. Why would you rent that out?
So this one's from a host, deleted. My first guest didn't read or bring the map or directions. Didn't access or have a device which would translate my address into directions. Got lost, talked to them, couldn't, went to collect them, chatted as best as we could, came at home at 4 a.m., took all the fruit I left as part of breakfast away with them, asked to leave their bags, turned up for them 2 hours late, small, flat, huge bags. I just waited in for them. They knew it. Paid £30 for a large double breakfast, Zone 1 in London. I don't charge a cleaning fee. Criticized their own friend's hair being in the shower after she used it. Gave me 3 stars. Sounds like Karen's.
Karen's, for real. Cat Pal stayed in a ground floor flat in Paris with a few friends. On the first night there, we sat at the kitchen table having drinks, and I kept seeing movement in the corner of the room in my peripherals. I thought it was just the alcohol, so I ignored it. Turns out, the flat was crawling with mice, which we realized when we opened a kitchen cupboard and saw a whole family making their home among the balls. And the owner had the audacity to say, "Oh yeah, sometimes when it rains outside, the mice flock inside. You'll find this with every Airbnb in Paris."
Hell no.
No. I would rather go to a hotel.
There was one time me and Presley were we were in Savannah and we were going to try this restaurant out. And then we saw mice crawling on the floor. We were like, nope, we are not eating there.
I'm going to head out. That's what I would have said.
As soon as we saw it, we were like, no, thank you.
How about no? How about no?
Brustic Nick. Discover poop in the shower 2 nights in a row. That's gross. First night, I was exhausted and thought it might have been something else that happened to smell like shit. The second night, when more appeared as queen-size mound on the floor of the shower, I certain a fellow guest was choosing to forego the toilet. This was a flat in Barcelona where all 3 rooms were rented on Airbnb and the host lived in a different unit downstairs. I had the nerve to mention in my 4-star review that there were issues with other guests' cleanliness that the host was quick to attend to. The host came at me with fury in public reply. That's nasty.
Somebody was a waffle stomper. Gaston underscore Bigfoot, while staying in Colombia, around 700 US dollars were stolen from my Airbnb. It was a private house, and after looking at a hotel's camera across the street, a man came in with keys, opened the door, and took my stuff. The owner said it was a handyman that used to work for them. Neither owners nor Airbnb did anything at all. That's shitty.
Yeah, they should have changed the lock.
Should have changed the lock, should have gave you your money back.
Yeah,
Because why the fuck did this man have keys
he should not have.
to an Airbnb?
Yeah.
Bitch. Fuck you mean?
CJ6. I stayed one in the US that was decent enough. The neighborhood seemed fine. Then at around 11 p.m., 8 to 10 shots were fired right behind the house. I assumed someone was shot because ambulances showed up. The police looked around the property while we hid in the dark inside the house. There were no curtains in the back facing area where the shooting took place. That's one thing too. If there's no curtains or blinds, oh god.
Suspicious.
We were fucking terrified and didn't leave the house the rest of the night. I probably wouldn't either. It wasn't my Airbnb owner's fault. I told them about it since it wasn't on the news and they were shocked. They should still, after that, I would recommend that Airbnb owner to get some blinds.
Yeah.
Get some extra security like cameras and shit.
Yep. Ground fire. Funny, ironic name, actually. Went out to dinner with my brother and came back to my Airbnb burned to the ground.
Oh no.
Ground fire. Airbnb burned to the ground. Wow. Damn, that's... Ooh, was your stuff in it? I'm assuming probably so. That's shitty.
Yeah, that sucks.
That's shitty. On to the next Airbnb nightmares, which is posted by Argo Grayson 95. Airbnb nightmares. Back to the garden. This is a minor one, but I'll get the ball rolling. At our Airbnb in Europe, we had a full house, meaning that all 3 upstairs bedrooms were rented for a 3-day weekend. An unexpected heat wave 2 months early turned the top floor into an oven. We'd taken out the air conditioning that we used to have and were planning to replace it with dedicated units on the wall of each room, but it wasn't in yet. It was so hot that no one could sleep. Guests were shiny with sweat. We bought a couple of those huge turbine fans, as well as individual misting floor fans for each room, and asked them to open all the windows and bear with us. We fully expected mutiny, horrible reviews, and so forth. Cancellations and departures would have been understandable, but the reviews could have really been harmful to our future, and we had great reviews. They were champs and helped us and each other find ways to get the upstairs at least tolerably cool by evening, and didn't even mention it. That actually turned out to be pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
That wasn't bad.
Yeah, undescended. As a guest, fly several thousand miles, show up at the Airbnb, door code doesn't work, called the host. They said that they sold the house several months ago and blamed it on Airbnb for not canceling reservations. And they left an honest review, and in return, they were harassed by a billion-dollar management group. As a host, on multiple occasions, guests used my house to sell used drugs. One time a guest overdosed and almost died. Another time the guest stole everything out of the house to fund their drug addictions. Both occasions, guests left used needles all over their house. Oh god. And our first guest did $5,000 in damages. There was oil stains on couches and beds, and we later found out that they were shooting porn. And parents book teenager kids to have a rager out one of the houses. We immediately caught onto what was happening when the 20th kid walked in the house after being there for 2 hours. They broke the couch, stained all the Dovet covers, and were smoking blunts. And then one time when my outdoor cameras were down and a family booked for Easter Max's 6 guests, they showed up with 5 or 50 guests. 50 guests, damn. And didn't find out until the neighbors called me. By the time the guests had done 10K in damage. And then a Marine boot decides to throw a rager after returning from boot camp. Sounds about right. Shows up with the trash can and 30 bottles of alcohol to make jungle juice. Kids broke a couch, smoked inside, trashed the place. Cops show up and they jump out the windows and broke several of them. Multiple guests ignores our signs and use flushable wipes, and clogged main drains get upset when they see the bill. Damn, it sounds like this house has been through a lot.
Where the fuck are you? That's all I have to ask. Is what
saying,
city are you at?
Maybe you should not Airbnb.
Not in that fucking place.
Yeah.
Immediate_area 9178. I have a situation developing right now where I had to remove items from one of the bedrooms I rent out because a guest wasn't responding about checking out. I got everything cleaned, got the guest stuff packed, and called Airbnb support to ask them what to do with all her stuff. The guest contacted me back and insisted I'd misunderstood her and she was staying until Monday. I told her no, she wasn't, and her stay ends today. She can't stay because I have another guest arriving, and there's no possibility to extend. Some back and forth of the same nature before she starts making declarations she has nowhere else to go. I gave her another solid no and told her to return the keys for my listing or there would be a fee. Finally got her to budge that she would come back for her items and return the keys, still insisting she was going to be staying with me. Currently now waiting for her to show up and hoping my brother gets back home soon from a trip. Really irate, she's trying to strong-arm me into a free night. Wow. Crazy ladies.
Stupid mature content. More disturbingly hilarious than nightmares. My elderly father, brother, and myself rented a trendy-looking Airbnb in Montreal, Quebec. It's a solid, fine, great location, cute decor, rooftop patio. Always we spend a night on the town checking out the sights. Get some delicious pizza and drink too much beer. So we call it night and head back to our little home away from home. It's a 2-bed, which we didn't mind, and we're staying at only one night. My brother and I are sharing the king bed as Dad snores like a damn freight train. So climbing into bed my foot hits something metal. Upon further investigation, it's a cheap headlock concealing a large underbed drawer. Obviously, we gotta find what's in there. My brother picks it up, open with a butter knife. To our horror, this drawer is loaded with every freaking sex toy on the market. A series of wigs, costumes, a bag of panties, and unfortunate notebook entries of spicy stuff. Needless to say, we did not sleep in that bed.
I guess you could say that bed's been getting some action.
A lot of action.
A lot of fucking action, my guy. Aw, hold on, you have to hear this one though.
Okay.
I had a couple who booked next door and were ex-convicts. They turned the AC down to 40 degrees and tried to set up a meth lab. He later assaulted his wife, and I had to call the cops on them. Then I lived next to them until they moved out. They would not leave. Another time I rented from a guy who had hidden cameras and audio in the rental. I thought I had unplugged everything that looked suspicious, but no. He was also double booking that place. I had 2 separate guests enter my place while I was there, and they had the code. When I complained to Airbnb, he came by to discuss it and asked me not to leave a bad review. The next morning at 7 a.m., he blasted a sinister song on high through one of the speakers to wake me up. It was Cry Me a River.
Oh my god.
I left that day and got a full refund. Also, he was a semi-famous person and nut job. Yeah, wow. I can just imagine hearing the Justin Timberlake blasting Cry Me a River. That's crazy. All right.
This last One is by Strict Character Airbnb Horror Stories. Blake, USA 25. Last weekend, 4 adults and last minute dog we agreed to. Dog crapped and passed all over the floor. Guests left it and threw a towel over one area. This is a $1,200 per night rental 4-night stay. Yeah, they should clean up after their dog.
Say no to dogs for Airbnb. Northern Lights XV. I arrived to find squatters had been living in an Airbnb. It was overrun with cockroaches, rats, moldy food, dirty clothes, and dishes. We were forced to go to a hotel while waiting for a resolution, but Airbnb ended up refunding us. Yeah, they kind of have to in that situation.
Yep.
You didn't even get to say.
Indie Mill. Airbnb delete my reviews, so I have to share my story here. I mistakenly booked the wrong Airbnb and instantly canceled the reservation. I was within the cancellation time and the reservation should have never gone through because I canceled it minutes after booking. I then made the correct reservation. When I arrived at the Airbnb, I discovered I was in the wrong unit. The reservation had never been canceled. I had been charged for 2 units. Airbnb refused to issue a refund and said I had to work with the host who would not issue a refund because I entered the home. Airbnb's customer service is a steaming pile of hot garbage. You are 100% on your own if you have an unhelpful host or something wrong with Airbnb's platform.
Damn.
I will say you do kind of have to be careful with some things like these because I haven't had issues with Airbnb itself, but Booking.com, I have had a couple experiences of similar things where they either didn't cancel something that was supposed to be canceled, or we paid for something and they're like, "Oh, you didn't have a hotel," even though the money was taken out and all that stuff. So
Why the fuck you lying? I
yeah, you
know
gotta be
it's
careful with some
lying.
of this stuff. So I would keep receipts, bank transaction statements, stuff like that. But
T Sommerfeld T4. Just posted my horror story on the page. Essentially, we got back to our Airbnb to find people in our basement doing a photo shoot that the superhost knowingly let into our place. Police came and said this is a huge problem house. There was even an article written about it in the local paper, and apparently the neighbors are in the middle of a lawsuit with the owner.
oh boy,
Well, then they shouldn't have that host listed on Airbnb. If that's the case.
no.
Because if you're in the middle of a lawsuit, then yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
You shouldn't, especially with your neighbor. Your neighbor.
Yeah.
And you let people just come in and do it. I bet you the photo shoot was a porn shoot.
It seems like there is a lot of that.
They'd be renting Airbnbs just to get the porn shot.
Yep.
Wild.
Well, they be wanting to just make it feel more natural.
Natural. Sure. As you can see, there's definitely some wild shit going on, so definitely read the reviews so you can avoid creepy people and cockroaches. Also, do your research on the towns you're visiting. However, Airbnb does still have many good benefits, and there are good hosts and good customers. You just kind of have to sift through and look very closely to a lot of things and make sure it looks very realistic and not.
Yeah, and the more reviews and the higher, like if you see
better
somebody who has 500 reviews and it's 4.9 stars, it's probably a good place, versus you see some place only has 3 reviews and it 0 stars, maybe not. Don't stay there.
Also, you just really need to pay attention to the pictures because some of them do look like cookie cutter kind of shit. So you just have to be able to differentiate between what is being made to look like this and what it actually is.
And do your research on what places wherever you're visiting are
better,
more safe.
Yeah. But thank you for listening to another episode. We will be back next week with another exciting episode. Like always, Remember to keep your eyes open though, because you don't want bed bugs in the bed, and you should definitely check your mattresses and under the covers every time you go somewhere, because they be hiding like motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're creepy crawlers.